Hi, this is Brett with Monarch Capital Home Loans, and today we want to talk about APR, annual percentage rate. What is it? It's an issue that causes a lot of confusion among consumers. It's hard to explain. One of the reasons I think it's a little hard to explain is because it involves math. Specifically, it involves some real-life algebra. And I'm going to do my best here to kind of walk through this. Forgive me ahead of time if it's not the most clear, but we're going to do our best. The first thing to understand, though, is just basically what the real-life algebra of some of these loan equations look like. And basically, in any kind of loan, you've got 5 variables. The first one is present value. What is the loan amount? Future value. What's the future value of the loan at the end of the period? How many periods do you have? In this case, we'd say 360 for a 30-year fix. And what's the note rate? What's the rate, or the lending rate that's going to be used for the loan? And then you can solve for the 5th variable, and typically we're solving for payment. Now again, you can solve, if you have any of the 4, you can solve for the 5th. So it doesn't have to just be that you know these 4 and you solve for payment. It's, again, in algebra, you have any of the 4, you can solve for the 5th. This is generally what we're solving for. But when we look at APR, what we're really solving for is what's the theoretical rate given loan costs. Maybe it helps, though, to start by looking at a no-cost loan. Let's look at a no-cost loan where a loan of $350,000, 0 costs, 30-year fixed, 4 1/4. We solve for the payment of $1,721. The APR equals the note rate because there's no cost. So there's nothing to try to consider, nothing to solve for relative to the rate itself. However, if we look at that same loan and then consider what if we actually rolled in $3,500 worth of costs. What if it actually costs $3,500 to get that rate and our payment went up, right? Because we're rolling $3,500 in costs in, our payment goes up about $17, $18 a month. Now the question is, all right, the note rate's 4 1/4, but considering that extra 18 bucks that I'm rolling into the loan, what's the theoretical rate? What's the APR? What are we going to do there? Well, to solve for X, what we do, and it's a little bit counterintuitive here, but we are going to solve for the present value of $350,000, okay? Because we're going to use a theoretical base loan amount, all right, with the higher payment, considering the costs rolled in. And when we do that and solve for X, or solve for APR, we see that we don't get 4 1/4, we get 4.33. Now the thing to understand is that on your note, in the actual paperwork, it's not going to say 4.33, it's going to say 4 1/4. But APR gives you kind of an idea of what the relative costs are for a base loan amount with a higher payment. What kind of rate are you really looking at? How does this actually work in real life? Well, it starts to become a tool to try to evaluate which loan is better. So let's look at a low-cost loan with $1,950 in costs at 4 1/4 with an APR of 4.3 versus a high-cost loan where there's $7,500 in costs, but your rate goes down to 4%, your payment's $1,706, and your APR is 4.18. The question then is, which one is better? And you know what? Here's the funny thing about this. I think a lot of us would say, well, the APR is lower on the right, therefore the one on the right is better. Ironically, the high-cost loan, the one that costs $7,500, is just better. I get a 4% rate. My APR is actually lower than on the left, and so I should take that. The answer, however, is that it all depends on how long you're going to be in the loan. Because that math is really figured out over the course of the full 30 years. So whether the $7,500 is really worth spending to get the 4% note rate and the 4.18 is going to really depend on how long you're in the loan. And this is where a good loan officer can really help guide you through some good thinking about what you should or shouldn't invest based on your expectations of how long you're going to be in the home. So just remember, and I think the point of this that I wanted to make here is that APR is not the one thing to focus on. It's a relative measure, and the thing that you really have to keep in mind is it's only really relevant, it's in some respects, as a measure when you can kind of compare it as to how long you're going to be in the loan itself and how long it's going to take for those costs to amortize out. Again, we would be happy to help you with that analysis and look forward to working with you. Take care. Bye-bye.